Everyone, hope everyone is doing well today. Today we have a new guest. He's actually one of my viewers, and we've been messaging back and forth. And I thought, hey, let's get a different voice that people haven't seen. So I wanted to get on Steve from Instagram at Splenda Sports Cards. What's going on, Steve?
Not much, brother. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor. I'm definitely a fan of your content, your voice, and I'm a supporter. Um, I agree with a lot of the points you bring up. So that's what drew me in. And once I finally caught hand, we were talking a little bit before. Once I finally caught hand of your content, man, that's when I started messaging you. And I was like, dude, I, I feel where you're coming from because being in the hobby, I've thought a lot of the same things. And but again, I love the hobby. I'm all about positivity. The hobby brings a beautiful thing. There's a lot of great people in it. There's a lot of great things to do. It's a wonderful community. But yeah, with any market, uh, I think it's fair to ask questions, and I appreciate that you're a leading voice that asks a lot of these questions. So, but yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's good being here.
So, a little bit about your collection and your hobby, or how you got into the hobby. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So my introduction in the hobby was like in the mid '90s, mid to early '90s. So my dad was in the hobby for as long as I can remember. Um, he would collect and he would deal. And then he started doing shows probably right around when I started hitting my teens. So I got exposed to like being out on the field and like learning how to wheel and deal, learning how to use it. We had an old Beckett book magazine we'd walk around with, and he'd be at his table, and my older brother and I would go around and look at cards, and then we'd go back to his table, we'd check the Beckett. And but yeah, the early mid '90s, I'd have been like 4 or 5 when I first learned how to like pick up a Beckett, look up a year, find the set. So my dad got me in the hobby in the '90s. Um, Grew up with it. Big sports guy, played sports all my life. My older brother Ryan and my dad Papa Rob. So shout out to them. They got me into the hobby. Um, Always looked up to those guys. So took a break for a while in my 20s. Um, Priorities, work, different things definitely came ahead of like spending money on cardboard. But now that I'm like 32, bought my house, own my cars, uh, no kids, so the finances make it more lucrative to get back into the cardboard. So the last like 2 years, I've been back.
Okay, let's take a look at some comments. Okay, we had Ziggy earlier and a Kamikaze Sports Card Hybrid, and then also Chris C. Chris, what's going on? So, what's your favorite card in your collection?
Ooh, um, that's tough. I had somebody ask me that before, and man, I really drug my toes. Um, it's funny in the hobby. It's hard to make that call, but it's easy to like project what you want to get. Like looking to the next move. Like I know what cards right off the top of my head I want to get, but my favorite I have, um, I'm a big KD fan, so I would have to say it's probably my immaculate out of 25 on card 3-color patch KD. That would probably be my favorite. And one that I just picked up, I got in the mail today. I showed you earlier. I'll show it real quick. I ended up opening these, by the way. It would be this would probably be right up there with the KD. This would be a 2020 flawless gold out of 10 Jokic 3-color patch auto. So those would probably be like my favorite cards that I own.
Okay, that's nice. Let's look at. He says, "What were you collecting when you were a kid in the '90s and early 2000s?"
Oh, good. That's an awesome question. This is random. I love Jerry Rice. That one's not so random. But baseball is what really got me in. So I'd collect Jerry Rice, but Jeff Bagwell. I loved Barry Bonds. A lot of 90s baseballs guys like Manny Ramirez, Ken Griffey, like a lot of those guys in the 90s. And I was so attracted to the 90s baseball inserts. Tops and Upper Deck and Top Stadium. I mean, they really had some great art on the cards, and like to me, that's the nostalgia and the fun of collecting. It's like, is this aesthetically pleasing enough for me to hold it? So in the '90s, with all those awesome inserts, it was real easy for me to like jump in and find my niche.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's look at some comments. Bob Boozle says, my favorite card is my T206 Honus Wanger.
Banger.
Wink,
Good.
wink.
Yeah. God bless you, brother. I don't blame you.
All right. Chris C says, wondering what your thoughts are on why we can't have the Nationals on both East and West Coast. West Coast has a lot of collectors also. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm all for it going out west. It's just, I wouldn't know why it hasn't. I know, at least of in the last like year and a half, 2 years since I've really got back into, I've noticed a big collector like market out west. I wasn't aware of all that. I knew in the Midwest, in the East Coast, there's like a strong hobby market. So maybe they're like maybe just a little bit behind, and they have to see the growth, and maybe they'll adjust based off that. But I can't really comment why it wouldn't be out there. I wasn't aware of such a strong hobby following out west myself until I actually flew out to Arizona. What would it have been? Last November. And while I was there, I was in Phoenix, and I was with my my buddy. We flew out for a couple days, and I just decided to Google. I was like, let's check out some card shops. And there was like 4 or 5 really nice shops in the area. So I keep hearing it's growing out west. So I think it'd be nice if they did something out west. I know a lot of people out west are probably bummed it's in Atlantic City this year, and they're not going to be able to make it. So yeah, it'd be fair to kind of like at least split the difference. I think that would be more feasible, right?
I mean, I always thought that a centralized location would be good. I mean, obviously there's Chicago, but maybe Dallas, because then you get
Yeah.
people from the East Coast and West Coast. You know, it's not too much.
What do you think about? I don't mean to cut you off, but what do you think? Like Dallas would be a nice location, but they always have the Dallas show. Would that be like? I don't know. That's what made me think. Like
that's a good point.
I would be okay with it. Like I'm not gonna say don't do it in Dallas, but would that almost like conflate and almost like, I don't know, almost pick something different because there is pretty much I don't know if it's every other month in Dallas or every quarter. I'm not sure how that show runs, but I know it's pretty often.
Yeah, it's usually pretty often.
I would like to go to something like that, to be honest. Like I hear a lot of good things about that Dallas show. It's a different market, I've heard. It's like really high market. We got a lot of it's a good econ down there from what I hear down in Texas.
Okay, let's go through a few more comments. Kevin Jones, love the 97 Tops high octane Jerry Rice. Okay.
I'd love to. That it sounds so familiar, but I'm trying to like picture it in my head. I can't recall that card. But if it's Jerry Rice, it's a banger. So yeah, good call, bro. Good call. Can't go wrong.
Jerry Rice was awesome. Even if he used what was that thing? Stickum?
Yeah, they say that, but you know what? That's like, dude, who wasn't doing stuff like that then?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's almost like
all these athletes probably did stuff.
It's like pitchers using substances, you know, when they're live pitching, if they're rubbing their hat or touching something. Like, yeah, we all know. And like, trust me, I'm nobody, but like being an ex-athlete playing sports, like, yeah, you want a pure game, but we all know when you're in the heat of competition, like you're gonna try and do what you can to win. Like it's in a way, it's human nature. It's a sad truth, but it's a truth. But yeah, if those guys were using Stickum and everybody else was, Jerry still did it better, I guess. I think a lot of that.
I think everyone used it. That's what was said. And I think he even alluded to it, or someone said that. I
Right.
don't remember the comments.
There's other guys. It's just in that time, wide receivers weren't these marquee stars. I think Jerry really ushered that like position. I mean, he's obviously the greatest, but he really like made that position into like a big X factor. So I'm sure other guys used it. It's just nobody was as good as Jerry, and because he was at the top of the heap, everybody hated him, and that's kind of, or well, not everybody hated him, but are going to maybe speculate on that Stickum thing more on him because he was that good. It's a lot like Bonds and the steroids. I agree. I'm not advocating people to use steroids, but it's like everybody was using them, and Bonds was still that
Maybe
good.
except Ken Griffey. I don't think Ken Griffey used it.
Good point. I agree. I don't think Griffey. I honestly don't think Jeter did either.
I don't think Jeter did
I don't
either.
think Jeter, like, again, anything can happen. This is all speculative. It's just two dudes' opinions. But I agree when you look at Jeter and Griffey, there's like a purity there. I think Griffey's swing is just so naturally beautiful. I don't think anybody would be willing to admit like something that beautiful and pure. It's like, no funny, but no hanky panky on that swing. That was real.
Right.
But
right. You know, I'm a lefty, and just seeing a lefty just swing like that, I just remember it. Yeah, Ken Griffey's swing is just perfect.
So, not to beat a dead horse with these two guys, because I look up highly to him. But Bonds was like, if you remember it was this quick turn. His hips would turn. I don't even think he'd step. I mean, and it sounded like a shotgun went off, and it was gone. It was in the river.
He got so big. Do you remember?
Yeah, he did. I think 2001 or 2002. I want to say 2001 maybe, where I do recall where it was like at the beginning of that season. I even think there was a documentary, that spring training. I think everybody, like, Bond showed up and everybody looked and they were like, whoa, he got sour diesel. Like, he got big and quick. So I would probably assume, yeah, he probably did some hanky panky. But when you look at those numbers comparative to a lot of those other stars then who probably are on the same list of guys who are using, I wish I could remember the numbers, but there's a viral thing. Actually, I saw it on Instagram. It's like Barry Bonds at bats versus his on base safely. And you're looking at those numbers and you're like, that can't be real. And it's like, that guy was pitched around more than anybody in baseball. So he did it on even a limited amount of at bats. So that's what makes me like pump the brakes on a lot of the Bonds hates. It's like, dude, this guy was, if you didn't see it, I kind of get it. But if you're able to watch guys like Bonds and Griffey, you kind of know, you're like, these guys are just different.
Yeah. I remember, I think they used to intentionally walk him when the bases were loaded.
Dude, they would.
That's insane.
Imagine that type of respect. I mean, I played baseball. I used to be good. But I could, and like, I used to bat in a lot of the middle part of the order. And I remember guys walking the guy ahead of me to get to me. So I never was that guy who's like, we're just going to walk this guy if we don't want to dance with this devil. I wasn't that devil. I mean, I was good, but we had a guy ahead of me batted third, and he was phenomenal. And when things were getting close, teams would just be like, we're not going there with this guy. We'll pitch to the little guy behind him. Me. But yeah, I hold Bonds in high regard. I'd hold Jerry Rice in high regard. I mean, we're talking guys that cemented legacies. And like, if you want to bring up those talking points where it's like, hey, the Stickum, hey, the steroids, especially the steroids, I can understand why people have a big gripe with that. I do. For me, I don't know. Maybe it's because I played, I look at it maybe slightly differently, where it's like, I can understand being in that position where you're tempted because your competitiveness is that prevalent. So I don't know. It's not an excuse. It's just a perspective, I guess, for me.
Right. Do you think he belongs in the Hall of Fame?
My opinion, without a doubt. I don't watch baseball now because of that. I just, to me, if Bud Selig didn't know that a lot of this stuff was going on, I don't know. It's a can of worms that you'd have to get into, where it's like these guys running the MLB knew these guys were doing this stuff. Like, there's no way. I mean, and these guys who now we're blackballing their legacies literally saved baseball after that 90 strike. You know what I mean? Like, I would agree. McGuire and Sosa, they're not those Hall of Famers to me. Like, they don't, but like Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, that the Hall of Fame shouldn't even stand without those guys. That's just my opinion. And a lot of people probably would push back, and they have every right. Probably have a lot of guys like, well, it's not for cheaters, and you're absolutely entitled to that right and your opinions. I won't even watch baseball. I just think it's a joke now. It's like the guys who literally saved the game in the 90s and ushered into today, it's like now they're like the Palmeiros, the Ortizes, the Rodriguezes. Like, I'm not going to act like these are like choir boys, but they saved baseball after a really trying time with that strike. And now they're just looked upon like, that doesn't sit well with me. I don't think that's right. Maybe it's because I'm connected to those guys. It was my childhood, but I don't know. That's a good debate to get in with people, because purists would argue against me, and they'd have every right to.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Schilling should be in the Hall of Fame too. And I don't think he cheated.
Now, this is the one that gets me. Was Schilling ever named on anything, like as far as like performance enhancers? Was he even?
No. No.
See, then that one's a total different argument. That's a totally different, like, completely different situation. I think we can both agree Schilling's blackballed for political affiliation and ideology. That's ridiculous. Isn't O.J. Simpson in the Football Hall of Fame?
He was in the Hall of Fame before all of that went down.
Okay, fair. Good point.
Yeah.
But like, okay, before all that, these Hall of Fame guys don't have the right to strip something like that. I mean, if maybe I'm on a stretch making that comparison, maybe I'm off with that, but it's like, I don't know.
I mean, Pete Rose, in my opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame too. So.
I agree with that one too. If you want to be like, even if you wanted to do something like he's in as a player, and maybe you want to put something in note where like he cheated as a coach. But I mean, I don't know how you'd even do that. But like as a player, that's not even debatable. He's a Hall of Famer. Now, granted, I think gambling might be a little bit different than like steroid use. You could argue both are influencing the outcome of games, and you'd be right. I think coaching is a little bit different. Now, they say he never bet against this or bet on his team. I can't remember, but they were saying the way he bet, it didn't influence games. Who can prove that? You know what I mean? But I do agree, as a player, I think Pete should be in. I mean, what he's done, I don't think will ever be done again.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know if you've heard of, I forget the journalist, but he uncovered some hanky-panky going on in the NFL. There was a game in I think the 1970s. I know it's a different sport, but it was a game at the Meadowlands, and maybe in 77, 78. And you know how every quarterback today takes a knee, to end the game, with less than 1 minute, 30 seconds. So they didn't take a knee, and the other team didn't have timeouts. And so the conspiracy theory around it was that, they wanted to, rig the game because he was blackballed, a quarterback. And so who knows? It's just strange that I think it goes on in sports, all this funny business. And, they're punishing guys like Rose and, Bonds, and the list goes on.
My brother, I agree with you, but everybody needs a scapegoat.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? And it's like, if we can get away with our laundry, we can use these guys as little like dominoes. We can tip them down, and we can do what we do behind the curtains, and like we can show that we're really pure because we can punish these guys. But I agree with you, like, dude, I used to bet on sports and stuff, and I mean, nothing serious, like, but I quit because there's literal NBA evidence of Donahue, like there's walking, breathing evidence of a guy telling you, he's like, yeah, we would do these things to alter games and punish players and do this, and we'd manipulate. Like, if there's living, breathing evidence walking around talking about it, it's like, it can't be that insane to question some of these things. Again, sports is a huge gambling marketplace. It's like cards in the hobby. Like we discuss all this hanky panky that goes on. Sports is a huge multi-billion trillion dollar industry. And like, why wouldn't you manipulate a marketplace that all other marketplaces get manipulated? So I just, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they blackballed that quarterback and did something, especially back then. You could cover stuff up back then so much easier than you
Exactly.
could
There wasn't
now.
social media. And I think Herm
Yeah.
Edwards, the college coach now, he was involved in that play, I believe. I forget what exactly happened, but it was just the weirdest thing. Maybe I'll send it to you. I
Yeah,
know.
you'd have to. I'm curious to see about it because honestly, I've never heard. I mean, I've never heard this. I'm not yaying or naying. I would believe once I see, because I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't.
Yeah. I actually heard this through, you've probably heard this guy, Wayne Allen Root. No?
No. I'm not familiar with that.
He's a political guy, but he was
Okay.
talking about it and he's saying like things are rigged all over, and I'll send it to you. But
Yeah, you should, because I
Yeah.
would definitely deep dive into something like that. And I don't know this dude, but he's onto something. A lot of things are manipulated.
Yeah.
You can say rigged. I like to use the word manipulated.
Yeah.
A lot of things get manipulated, and it's not that far-fetched to like dive in and see it, and it shouldn't be that taboo to question it.
Exactly.
Right now we're in a situation, in a climate where it's unbelievable to me how some things go on, and if you question it, you're immediately a bad guy. You're a hater. You want bad things in the hobby. You want card prices to go down. You don't, and it's like, I couldn't be that naive.
Right.
Maybe I don't know. It sounds, I don't want to sound ignorant, like I know something other people. That's far from it, man. My IQ's low. But I definitely think questioning the mainstream, questioning the authoritative hands, if you will. I mean, when did that become blasphemous? I just didn't. I don't understand that.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. But let's take a look at some of these comments. And Rocco Rosado says, football game, late 1970s, New York Giants quarterback Joe P. just had a very bad play call against the Eagles. Yeah, he fumbled the ball, I believe, rather than taking the knee. And the conspiracy theory was that the mob had some blackmail on him, and so he just did that so he could cover the spread. So then I think Herm Edwards scored the touchdown.
If you throw in that context piece with the mafia, I'm not one bit surprised.
Yeah,
like that makes more sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this YouTuber, Sean Sweeney. Maybe I should get him on one of these days. He watches some of my content. He has like all these YouTube videos that he said that all these games are scripted. Now, I can't prove that, but I wouldn't be surprised if, all this hanky panky is going on right in front of us. But
do you know what got me, if we're going to stay on the NFL with some hanky panky and like outcomes of games? You know what really sold me? I mean, really opened my eyes. Was the Marshawn Lynch Super Bowl in Seattle against the Patriots, where they threw the ball on the one. They did not want Marshawn Lynch to win that MVP.
That is so weird. I was thinking to myself, all they had to do, Marshawn Lynch would have scored the touchdown. I'm 100%
on those last drives that they had the ball to get back. That man was taking 5 yards a clip. I played football. 5 yards a clip in the fourth quarter. You're not going away from that. That means the other team is weak. They're tired. You've taken their will. 5 yards a clip on the ground in the fourth quarter, and then you get to the goal line and throw. That's when, to me, I thought to myself, there's no way a coordinator, a head coach, there's no way a quarterback wouldn't have audibled and been like, no, I'm giving the ball to Marshawn right now. That was the one of the most obvious things where a light bulb went off to me, and I'm like, dude, this ain't right. like something's up. And if you remember, that was the Super Bowl leading up in all those pressers. I'm just here so I won't get fined. I'm just here so I won't get fined. He was pretty much to the NFL. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to put on our tinfoil hats if somebody made a call and was like, Marshawn's not going to be doing these MVP interviews. We want Russell. And when you get down there, you're going to throw the ball. I know that's crazy tinfoil hat talk.
Yeah,
Like,
that sounds crazy, but
but
you have to. So Judson Penn Stone said scripted or full. So the coach was what's the dude name?
Pete Carroll.
Yeah, Pete Carroll.
Mhm.
So Pete Carroll made, in my opinion, a bonehead decision in the what was that? The national championship game. It was one of the biggest games.
Texas. I think was it the Texas with Vince
Yeah,
Young?
Texas USC. He decided to go for it on the 50-yard line rather than
Oh,
punt the ball. With 5
bro.
minutes to go, they were winning by what, 9 points, and then Vince Young and all of them, they
He
won the
tied his
game.
Superman cape and he went crazy. I remember that. And you know, what's funny is it was a 4th and short. It was right around the 50. Michael Huff, a safety from Texas, stonewalled Lendell White on that 4th and 1. And Texas got the ball back, scored. And then they somehow got the ball back again. And that was game time. And you're right.
It's
Why
like Pete
wouldn't you
Carroll
punt
has
the
made
ball?
bad calls. I mean,
That's true. I mean, like, and
so
if
I
you're
don't know. It
arguing
could have
against
been.
our conspiracy, that's a fair point where it's like this dude does do dumb spit in dumb moments. I guess
Yeah.
that'd be fair.
And then you have to remember, Belichick was smart enough not to call a timeout. So he's playing mind games, and that mind game worked.
True.
If that wasn't,
True.
a tinfoil hat moment.
If it weren't, yeah.
Yeah, if it weren't,
If it weren't, yeah, for
But if
sure.
it were, then you have a
You
lot of
throw the ball on the goal line when you have Marshawn
John
beast mode.
Lynch.
Yeah, you
Exactly,
just
beast mode. Why wouldn't you give it to him?
And what's crazy is I remember watching that game. I was with my grandparents at their place, and my pap, God bless him, one of the greatest people, one of the greatest men I know. But he has a special hate in his heart for Tom Brady. So when that all happened and they threw the ball and ended up losing and Marshawn, I mean, we watched Marshawn get the ball, like I said, 5 yards a clip that whole drive. I mean, the defense was tired. They were on their heels. And like, I'm no football guru or expert. I played, but in the 4th quarter, when you got the steam rolling, you don't pump the brakes, man. You don't stop running the ball down a team's throat in the 4th quarter when they're pretty much waving that white flag and they're like, we're going to give you these 5 because we're just tired. I agree, though. If we're on the hanky-panky business, that was I didn't mean to go off tangent, but that was one of the light bulbs that went off for me, that Super Bowl, where I was like, dude, this is a big stage for something this blatant to kind of happen like that. Who knows? Maybe some of these coaches have egos and they do want to make those play calls in those moments.
Yeah, I think they get too cocky or confident.
I think that happens a lot in college. The NFL, I don't believe so, unless you're the Chargers coach, because this last year I never saw a team go against their quarterback more than the Chargers coach and Herbert. That poor dude, like, what a season and what a talent. And like all these close games, it seems like their coaching staff goes against them and makes these bogus 4th down calls and like won't kick field goals and stuff. It makes you think too. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like, are you losing? Are you throwing this? I don't know.
Yeah, is the mob on your case?
Maybe not today. Those days have died down, but
Yeah,
back in that conspiracy you brought up back in the day, I would not be surprised. They used to be able to get to almost anybody, man. I mean,
right.
That was that time.
Right. So now regarding the hanky panky in the hobby, I mean, we could go about it in many ways. So maybe I'll start off with this. So today I was looking at my Instagram and we were talking before also we started, and for some reason I couldn't find Fanatics on there. And before I was saying it, hey, they overpriced the items on IG. I tagged them.
Yep.
And I was seeing everyone else's profile and didn't see them. So I made a post about it. And within an hour, I could see them. So it just seems strange. And then you were just talking about algorithms and how maybe if you have a certain message, how we see with other topics, you won't be able to see certain content, and you said that you couldn't see my content for until I did those videos on Dan and
Yeah.
Curator. So
That's when I first like caught on to your content. And excuse me, it was because of Flippin' Steve. I saw a video he posted, and he was talking about a lot of stuff that was going on in the hobby and a lot of back and forth. So I thought to myself, like, what's he talking about? So I dove more into that, and I somehow found your content. But yeah, back to your point, as far as like, I've been on the card content for a while now, man. And no, trust me, this isn't like a jab at you, but I never heard of you. And then when I finally found your content through all that back and forth, um, I started listening to you, and I was like, this dude is like saying all the stuff I've been thinking. Like, how hasn't this even been talked about? Nobody like in my content feed, I would get all the mainstream typical,
right,
which
right.
is fine. I'm not, I watch a lot of good, bad, and different. Everybody has their perspective, but like I never saw anything of yours. And that's what made me think when you sent me that thing about fanatics blocking you or potentially blocking you.
Yeah, right.
That's what made me think like, dude, like I never got your content for months, and I'd been on the card content trail. So that's what made me think is like, you must be speaking a narrative that might be getting some algorithm play, maybe some. Again, this is a marketplace, a financial marketplace. It is what it is. So if like you can limit the negativity or limit the voices that challenge the narrative or mainstream, it would be beneficial towards the market. And that happens in other markets. So that's what made me think like, man, I wonder if they're like, because another one, to be honest, was Sports Card Radio.
Exactly.
I had no clue who those brothers were. And then somehow I can't remember what was going on at the time. There's been so much hobby dumb stuff that it's even hard to like pinpoint which piece of drama like made me correlate. But Sports Card Radio came out and during some type of drama or some type of hanky panky, and that's when I got on them and I was like, holy crap! Like these dudes are straight shooters. They just say it, and like they're no BSers, and they come with receipts. That
Yeah.
one brother on Sports Card Radio, man, God bless him, keep him safe. Like he comes with receipts, bro. Like, to me, in a marketplace, you need that. Like
Yeah,
I
exactly.
advocate for a lot of content guys that I think are good for the hobby, and they might not discuss some of the stuff you and I discuss because I do generally feel like, yeah, they're good for the hobby. Like they're hobbyists. You know, I'm not against somebody making money in this hobby.
Exactly. Same here.
That's capitalism. I'm all for that. You know what I mean? But there's some trades in techniques that go on in the content space that leave little red flags for me, and it makes me question things. And that's not to say they're oh, these are bad people. They have 100% nefarious intent. Hey, sometimes people do stuff and it's just like, man, I did something wrong. I made a mistake and I was maybe not aware. So I don't want to be like, people are just bad in the hobby and these certain content people are just bad. I would never do that because everybody has a right. Everybody should be able to present their
What they
voice,
think.
their pace, their hobby, goals and whatever. I'm all for that, man. But it's different when you start putting price tags on stuff. Speculative price tag. That's when I sit there and I say, that's nefarious.
Do you remember last year with the whole Pokemon thing? I know this is not sports cards, but I think Sasha T was in the video, and then
Yeah,
one of his buddies saying, "Oh yeah, man, bro, this thing's gonna go to 1 million." And then I'm thinking, okay, this just seems weird. And
bro.
everyone was jumping up and down. I'm like, no, it didn't seem right.
I
I'm like, I don't want to celebrate this because it just
Dude,
seems
that's
off.
what I say. When you're watching content and people are making transactions on projected values, not actual values, that's when I think it's fair if you're putting that out there in the open marketplace of ideas and you're putting your brand on it. Somebody like me who is in the hobby, I think has a right to say, what's going on? Why are you, I don't want to accuse people of pumping, but what else would you call that?
Marketing. That's what they
Yeah,
would
it's
say.
marketing. And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that is a tool. That is a tool to capitalism. I just brought up capitalism, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. Marketing is a tool. But in an unregulated space, that's where I'm like, it's a little, it's questionable. And it makes me question things. And I don't think that makes me a hater or like I want card values to go down. I think that's fair to question certain things. But
Exactly.
yeah, and to double off that Charizard deal, if I'm not mistaken, somebody, cite me. I don't want to be out of pocket. I want to say he bought that card off that Kahuna dude who was involved in that sale to Logan Paul with that case of the Pokemon that ended up being Ninja Turtles or
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. Thank you. Ninja Turtles would have been cooler, actually.
Yeah, it would have been.
So I kind of
Power Rangers. I think Power Rangers.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know me. That's that 90s heat.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, so like, okay, just to go back on your point with that transaction over the Charizard. One of those people we already know. I would never accuse Sasha T. I don't know the guy. I'll watch some of his content. I'm not going to accuse him of anything. I wouldn't. But like the other guy in the party, yeah, we can all like look at that and say that guy is a bad actor. So I wouldn't accuse Sasha T of anything. I maybe he did think that card would reach that value. The other guy, I think there's proof in the pudding now where it's like, yeah, we can point him out and say that dude's not. He's nefarious. He's got something up his sleeve. He's looking at profits. He doesn't care about the hobby. When you do that type of stuff, I mean, yeah, I'm fair to make those claims about you. I mean, you're literally doing it. So
Right.
you're guilty, bro. Like,
Right. I'll read this comment, then I'll go back to another thing that we're talking about. So Game Time Gallery says Kahuna went into self-imposed witness protection program, but then I think Card Porn had some pictures where he was at a Nets game or
bro,
something
he
like
was
that.
courtside. I think they even posted pictures of like the post after the game. They might have been partying and stuff. And
Yeah, he was at a nightclub or something. He was also at a hockey game. So yeah, he's just living the high life.
So what my question would be, it would have been the Kahuna guy and another content dealer type guy who I know. I don't want to just start name dropping people. I don't like that because I don't know anybody's intent. I think one party in that situation may have been oblivious. I don't know. The Kahuna guy definitely looks bad because from what I've gathered, the other party reconciled, paid, made right.
Yeah. Was it Millie Pops?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe
I forget
so.
these names.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'll let the comments like verify, but I'm pretty sure. I didn't want to. It's your channel. You can name drop, but I believe it was those two parties who sold that case to someone who I cannot recall, and then he sold it to Logan Paul, Jake Paul, Logan Paul.
Yeah, I forget how it went down.
I don't know. They look alike. He sold it to a Paul. So if I were that middleman, I would be like hunting and gathering for this Kahuna dude. I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but like I'd be looking, for.
I would use law enforcement. I don't want to get in trouble here. I would use law enforcement to the best of my abilities.
Of course, for sure.
That's how
there you go. I would be taking proper actions that way for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you meant to say.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Before someone accuses you.
Right. I don't want anything bad to happen. I don't want anybody going vigilante. That would.
Yeah, exactly. We gotta be careful these days.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You gotta watch.
Yeah. So going back to what you're saying, so you had trouble finding my channel, which I find it to be crazy. But last year, I remember no videos from Sports Card Radio. I was seeing maybe in November, December, but I didn't see anything go on. And I saw some of their videos like a year later, and I can't say it on YouTube. This is why they were, I think, shadow banned, where one of the guys in the industry, he did something with an underage girl. That's the best way that I could say it. And I never saw that video. I was watching sports card content all the time. And then you had Ziggy. I never heard of Ziggy and his beef with Card Ladder until he told me about it, and he commented. I'm like, oh, who's this Ziggy guy, right? He seems pretty nice to me. And then I watched some of his video. I'm like, oh, this is why he's ostracized, because he called him out and the algorithm didn't pick it up.
Dude.
So I think you're onto something, that the algorithm doesn't pick up, maybe content. Like now it's picking it up because I've gotten
Force
shout
of
out.
hand. Force of hand.
Exactly. Like
You've made enough of a splash now that you in my opinion, you've made enough of a splash now where you can't ignore certain things. Same with sports card radio. I mean, you could say the same thing about card porn and stuff like that too. I don't do all that. Nothing against them, but like I enjoy the thoroughness that you and sports card radio bring to the table, the transparency, the receipts. It's like I appreciate that. I want clarity on anything that's going on in the marketplace. That's fair.
Yes. So some people accuse me though that I don't have the receipts on, pumping and dumping. And what I respond to is behavioral patterns that I've noticed in different industries. That's where I come up with my analysis there. And I know this is an unregulated market, and obviously in a regulated market, you could have hanky panky going on, as there always is. But an unregulated market, what is going on, right? There's no government agency, and
right.
I think,
and I don't think we're calling for that. I'd like,
yeah, we're not calling for government regulation.
I
don't want the government to come in. Maybe fraud, which is the government's job to crack down on it to a certain degree, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I'm not saying the government should start regulating, what, our favorite content creators are saying, unless they're really actually doing, pumping and dumping, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then okay, in the crypto space, I agree that the government should cut down fraud there, but this is just fraud.
That's different. Yeah, that's different. And I agree. Like, they're within the arms of the law. They're within the arms of the government. Like, yes, the card hobby is, but it's not this. It's a marketplace, but it's not. It's an unregulated one. It's cardboard. It's like art. This is more comparable to art than it is to like hedge funds and stocks and stuff like that. Like, to me,
there's some people though in the industry that I used to do videos comparing to stocks, but I've learned over time you can't do that. So I made that mistake earlier on, but now I'm like, hey, there's some concepts that you could use from the marketplace, stock market, but they're not the same thing. So I've learned, so I made a mistake there earlier on when I started doing content. So, but there's some people that still, been in the industry for a while comparing to the stock market, and they want to use
the word that I get, it triggers me. Investments. Yeah. That's the word that gets me, is when these people are acting as this is a portfolio. And I'm not going to say, I already premised earlier, I'm not against people making money in this hobby. I get it.
Yeah.
But let's not pretend that this unregulated market doesn't have the nefarious characters, and they know they can get away with it in an unregulated marketplace. And they're not going to get away with it with blue chips. They'd Martha Stewart that person. And these big wigs, these big content guys, and this is why I would go back to your behavior patterns. You can say that you don't have receipts, and fair enough.
Right.
I would agree with your behavior pattern argument, because I brought up earlier, when you start putting speculative prices, projecting prices, you're making content based off this, projecting something. That's when I pump the brakes and I sit there and think, this would be, if this were Wall Street, you'd go to jail.
Well, a lot of people from Wall Street didn't go to jail after 2008 crisis.
Fair,
So,
fair.
but
That's
they
true.
do target
Good
some
point.
people.
That's a
They
good
do
point.
target some people, right?
Right.
So just like Mastro was sent to jail, but there are people in the hobby. I'm not going to name drop right now, but there's some people in the Mastro court document that are still big in the hobby. So
Dude,
it's like Wall Street. Why do some people go to jail and some people just give the free pass
they
and
get
then they
they
are
get this.
the, hobby leaders, the experts?
Right.
That's
And
what I don't get. And then when I go after them, people say that I'm negative or people come after me. And if you're
right.
to do content, people would go after you. So
You're not the
that's what
culprit. You ask the question and you
questions.
become the
Exactly.
culprit. And that's where I don't go for that. And our not just the hobby, a lot of societal things are gauged that way, where it's like we're gonna damn the person who brings it to attention instead of the fault at hand. And that's not that's not right. That's why I sing a lot of praises of people who offer that checks and balances.
Yeah. So Brendan Ryan says they never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Philosophy is in practice.
That's
Uh,
fair. And to
Yep.
me, to back your last comment, like how are these people allowed to stay in the market? And to my belief, to put my tinfoil hat back on, that's because these are puppets. They're professional market manipulators. And in my opinion, there's a reason that some people stay at the head no matter what. I mean, you can create your own doodle art and come up with a set of cards. And literally, like you got a nickel in this dime. You're clouded as a high regard person, pumping certain cards, and I just don't understand how like that wouldn't be considered some type of nefarious. I, I don't know. We're
So,
going
so
we're
going
going
on to
through.
this, going on to this. So the person that made that art, two of the characters were very similar to a book by Karen Ritchie.
Dude, I watch your and like to be honest with you, he might have the copyrights and that. God bless
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he does have the
And I
copyright.
and I say this.
That's the thing.
I don't want to speak ill will on anybody. I wish everybody the best. I wish everybody blessings, happiness, and great futures. But being a participant in the hobby, why I brought that up to me is because that would be an example of a market manipulator. To me, I'm not saying anybody's a bad person, but you're in a marketplace where you have a nickel in this dime, and you now like this whole fanatics thing. Like this monopoly is not going to end the way I'm not very hopeful. I'm just going to be honest. And you're seeing practices already out of the gate where to me it's like as somebody who's a collector, like I actually collect cards, like somebody who promotes collecting like that person, you're just going to come up with something that you and I could come up with some doodles and stuff and we could come out with a set of cards. We don't have the blue check following like that, and it's not going to catch on like somebody with a blue check would. But to me, like, how's that not market manipulating? Like
Speaking of
that's that's
market
that's
manipulating,
that's like being a paid puppet by fanatics. I don't know. I don't want to say like I don't think anybody. I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's a grinder, dude, and he's probably given a message to a lot of people that's helped them out and done good things for them. So I don't want to sit here and just like, oh, somebody's so bad and there is, but I do think you have so much clout in the hobby. You have so much esteem. You have such a platform and following. You coming out with a set of cards that doesn't jive well for me. And listen, he may have the intent where maybe I want to grow the hobby. I want to do these things. That's fine. But like after what we've seen, yeah, I think it's okay to question some things and say that seemed like a quick little pump and dump. It just to me it did. I'm not gonna personally bash anybody, but like for me, that seems like a market manipulating move. it just doesn't sit well with me. There's no collectability to something like that.
So here's the thing, the shill bidding, right? So that's what
Thank
drove
you.
me crazy.
Yes. And
So I was just thinking, who on earth is shill bidding like crazy? Okay, we see cards that are shill bid. Okay, the Mahomes cards were shill bid. Okay, like crazy during that time. But I look at a lot of auctions, and why were these V Friends cards shill bid? This was what Zero Cool's first product that came out, right?
Mhm.
And then I just saw, why did these boxes allegedly go for $16,000? Why? I mean, obviously,
You would know
um,
far more than I.
yeah.
Were like somebody said some of those comps were good. I,
Yes, I think I was on a
I'm not
podcast.
knowledgeable enough.
Yeah,
I
I was on
just
a podcast. Go ahead.
I just know that after seeing some of the data and some of the information I have, I don't think that's a $10,000 box of cards, and I don't think there's anything collectible about it. That's just my opinion, and people are totally entitled to have their opinion. They might love them, go for it. But like as somebody who's a practiced card hobbyist, like he supposedly is, and he's telling people to buy these PSA 10s, prisms, and he's a hobbyist and all this stuff. Why would you come up with something like that and think it would like be good for the hobby? If anything, it's just a cheap, quick, like, hey, let's make a quick buck. Let's do this. And if it sticks, it sticks. If not, we made a little bit of money and I still got my blue check mark and I can still navigate through the hobby as I want to, unchecked, if you will. And I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, people should look down or do anything or, you know, be rude to anybody. I wouldn't do that myself. But I think it's fair to have a conversation and ask questions and gain perspective and share perspective. Like, I think it's okay for me to say, I think that was pump and dumpy. I think that was hanky panky ish. In my perspective, I think I have that right. And I don't think it makes me like a negative person who is bad for the hobby because I question somebody that's higher up the chain in the hobby. I just don't, I don't care how much clout somebody has. That
Right.
means nothing to me. Your blue check mark means absolutely nothing to me. Your product and your actions, yeah, that means something to me. I can see it. I can comment, analyze. That means more to me.
Exactly. So this was an older comment. What do you think is the biggest scam hanky panky currently in the hobby, in your opinion? The list could go on, but what do you
Bro,
think?
I'll be sensitive because we're live and it's probably going to brush up on other socioeconomic situations and social climate situations. 2020, we all know what happened. Things shut down. Certain things went on within our society. Like that was literally, I'll go, it was the biggest hobby. It was the biggest hobby hanky panky. It was the biggest economic hanky panky. So I'll even go into the cards and I'll domino it to our economy is at large. So like during 2020 and that year and a half to 2 years, that in itself was hanky panky with the American dollar, and it turned into hanky panky into our hobby, in my opinion. Cards reached prices that they should have never reached. And again, I collect cards. So I'm not saying this like, oh, you know, I want card values to go down. Like I love my cards. I want my prices to be just. But I'm having a difficult time even with my own cards. I don't know exactly what they're worth right now because I just feel like cards hit such an inflated price. If we were to do a data dive, I'm stupid, but like if we were to do a data dive on the numbers, we would look at card hobby and prices and trends and different things. And we'd look at 2020 to 2021 midway. Well, I don't know when cards started plummeting, but that would be such an astronomical outlier in a mathematical data situation. You'd look at it as a non-relevant data piece. You'd say this doesn't even compute with the regular market trends of things. This went way up here. Like that's not normal. Any market that would just go straight up like that, That makes no sense. You'd have to ask questions. What were the outliers affecting to make it go up? So like card prices reaching the peaks they did, I think was the biggest hanky panky, because we didn't even know what the American dollar was worth at that point, and prices were just going crazy, and you had a lot of people just sticking more money into it, content and more stuff about it. So I think the whole COVID situation with cards, that whole boom, the farther we get from it, it seems like all that was a big hanky panky. I'm not
Yeah.
saying there's no value in cards, obviously, but the peak in the astronom in the rate in which they peaked, it's not normal for markets to do that.
Yeah. So the thing is that regarding the hanky panky, we have to look at, how should I say this? So there was some of these guys, right? You don't want to name call, right? And they talked about a reset. And I'm sure you've heard of this term reset, right? Yeah, okay. So they said they should have a reset of the hobby, and you should have only certain content creators, and it should be about positivity, and it should have basically high IQ talking points, right? So
Well, I'm
whenever,
out. I'm out. I'm dumb. Low IQ. Then I can't participate.
yeah, exactly. So you can't
I'm
create
out.
content now, right?
Well, I
So
can't anyway. I'm so dumb. But I can't participate because if there's an IQ level to this whole thing now, if that's what we're judging stuff, I just think that's a dangerous precedent to have a stance on something. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
yeah. And so they're talking about you should have a reset of the hobby. And then I see these people, these crazy people in Europe talking about this reset that we all know, they want to do certain things with the economy, restructure it
Yeah.
in their own crazy way. So you have the elites talking about this in our society, and then you have the so-called experts in the leadership talking about the reset. So I'm like, what the hell is going on?
So what, for me, a simple mind, if I were in a room with somebody who had this type of esteem and promoted this idea of we need to reset the hobby, my first question would say, what needs reset? And if their argument would be content, I would say you're setting a dangerous precedent that you don't want. If you want to have a certain IQ person give content and only that, or if you only want to, you're pretty much Orwellian establishing a narrative in the hobby, and you must follow the narrative, and you can only do this. And it's like, this is hobbies not like that. Should be an open community. Everybody should have a voice. The stupidest person like myself should be able to say their piece. I don't, I don't,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
Everyone
know
should
why
be
would,
able to speak. It doesn't matter how negative or how positive you are.
right.
And you shouldn't tell people if they have a certain opinion, get the hell out. I was told to basically shut up. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to keep quiet just because I call out some of the guys at the top of the food chain. And now, people are starting to watch during the downturn of the economy, not economy, but downturn of, the sports
Oh,
card hobby. Even though I still say that the shows are strong, there's a lot of
oh,
interest among young people.
the hobby is strong. This is what I would say. As much as I brought up my personal hanky panky with the whole 2020 thing, I think there were benefits to the hobby during all this. I do think there was a lot of manipulation with all of that situation. And I think a lot of federal money that was printed was given as more of an experiment to almost see where is the money going to funnel to in a situation like, where do people place value? People place value on cards. The hobby is strong. I would agree with that. There is value in cards. The values that cards reached, I don't believe were true values, but I do absolutely believe there's value in cards. There's a collector's market. That I believe in. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This is what I would say. I don't know where the hobby goes from here. I'm hopeful. I do believe the hobby's strong. I do believe the hobby has active participants and people enjoy it. And that means a strong hobby. That's a strong community. But I feel like we're going to have a lot of repercussions and consequences because of some of the stuff and these inflated prices that happened in the last, what, year or 2 years.
Yeah.
There's going to be some consequences.
And at first, I couldn't believe my eyes. The so-called leadership started to blame, and I've gotten this myself, saying that people like me are responsible for the drop in prices. And I'm like, bro, this is all economic. What's the Federal Reserve doing? What happened to our economy? I mean, I could go outside and, do things that I wasn't able to do 2 years ago, right? Go to a store without a mask, right? I could go on the train without a mask. I'm back in the office a couple days a week, which didn't happen for most of 2020. So it's all macro, and the Fed, instead of pumping money in, they're raising interest rates. They're taking money out. So I'm just thinking, like, do you think the audience is that dumb to believe this, or do they really believe that? That's the thing.
That's where I question too. I don't believe they believe it. I think they're just talking.
There's just making.
There's no way. There's no way that you think card prices, if you're actually been in the hobby, there's no way and there's no metric that you could use to prove that someone's negativity or questioning something would drive prices down. There's 100% data going to the American dollar and the current economic situation affecting card prices. There's 100% correlation in the economy directing card prices. There is no data that anybody could ever provide and say, well, this person, Raul and the sports card radio brothers are the reason the card market is crashing. It has nothing to do with the economy. Like, you'd have to be ignorant. And there's no way somebody would believe that who has any grasp of money.
Yeah, exactly.
If somebody starts blasting Lamborghinis tomorrow, do you think Lamborghinis are going to be worth less? There's no way. If the economy has a drastic change, do Lamborghinis become less? Yes. So it has nothing to do with someone's words. That's crazy talk. So somebody's blaming you on card prices going down. That's laughable.
Yeah, and some of these guys that were saying this, it's all about negativity driving prices down and like cornball content. They were like hardcore Ron Paul supporters that know everything about the Federal Reserve.
Dude.
They know the boom bust cycle, the Austrian business school, and they kept quiet during the bubble. I'm like, you are crazy for not speaking up. I think like those are like, I don't know how to describe those people. I mean, it just drives me crazy. I'd rather speak the truth rather than have all this money thrown at me. I consider that more
for sure. But I think we have a different view on things. Our perspective, like you said, there's not money that could be thrown at you that would make you sing a tune. Yeah. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't know if anybody's finding, but like, I think I know who you're referring to, and they have a business. Again, they have a nickel in this dime.
Yeah.
Just like I brought up before, when you have financial investment and incentive involved in the market, shut up. I mean, just shut up. You're only opening up a can of worms when you're invested and you're doing stuff. I'm not saying, I shouldn't say shut up. I think everybody has.
You're going to sound like very curator. Then.
Yeah, and you should be able to say what you want. I shouldn't say shut up. I was wrong. But essentially, they're telling people to shut up. And I guess that's why I use that word. And to me, it's like, you don't get, like, who voted you upon this pedestal where you now think you can decree what's valid and what's unvalid as far as card content? How about you just let the free marketplace of ideas, if a stupid person like me follows somebody who's doing, hey, these are the top 5 cards you need to aim for every week, and I go on and I buy those same cards every week, well, I got to be accountable to what I'm doing. And you know what? As bad of advice as that person's doing, it's really not his fault. This is the difference. If you're seeing somebody promoting bad advice, people like you are going to come out and say, hey, I think that's bad advice, X, Y, Z. That's totally different. Like, that's the challenging of ideas. That's how progress is made. I think Jordan Peterson, you have to risk to be offensive to make progress. And why would you be like, there's a difference of being blatantly belligerent, and like there's a difference of being offensive in thought. Like, this is a thought-provoking, challenging idea versus I'm just going to say something ignorant. That's totally different. But the way you question things and the way you piece things together, I can't help it. I idealistically align. It makes sense to me, but I'm a very questioning mind. So maybe people who don't prefer to question things, maybe they are oblivious to a lot of this stuff. Because I don't understand how people, some content, there's no way they believe some of the stuff they say.
Yeah, they're just doing it to appease people.
It's clout. It's for clicks and stuffs and views, and which is they have the right to, but people have the right to also challenge it.
Exactly. So maybe we'll wrap it up and with these few things. Do you think Star Wars and the Star basketball cards, do you think those are being pumped?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I sent you a video earlier today.
Yeah.
And when I talk about people who are market manipulators, I sent you that video, and that would be a prime example of my behavioral pattern. Like that, to me, they're pumping it. And it's almost like the Wall Street hands are at play. We're going to get our guys to do their dances and do their videos. And how is, I'm not as familiar with the Star card. So I am a bit ignorant, but if the Jordan Fleer, which is pack pooled, versus this Jordan Star, which comes out of, I'm not familiar. I can't. Somebody told me it was a different way. Like, it wasn't a pack pooled card. You'd had to be somewhere, or they gave them out the Star cards. I'm not familiar enough with them, but like, I just can't overnight accept that something's now $100,000 card. I just can't accept that.
So here's the counter argument. So they're looking at the mantle card, right? An high grade SGC 95, right? That's going to be over $5 million, right?
Heritage.
So they're saying, what's the next mantle, right? And I think they're looking at, PSA is grading the Star card. So in a high grade, this is what people are thinking. And I bought my Gatorade card, which is, a Star card, but it's an 8.5. I bought this before the news came out, the PSA news. So I did show it, but this was before PSA announced that, they'd be grading it. So I just want to make that disclosure. I mean, I did get it right after the news because it takes time for authentication getting shipped. But is this being pumped? I'm not sure, to be honest, because do people legitimately think this is the new mantle? That's just my thoughts. I mean, it could be. I mean, you make some interesting points.
Do you think this is, again, I like to use this word because I just think it's appropriate. This seems very manipulated in a way, because we all know how the grading companies kind of like, they set the price range. Like they pretty much dictate, based off your grade, what you're looking at value wise. In my opinion, like, why would this, like, all of a sudden now you're just starting to grade it? Card prices were good. It almost seems like, hey, we need a little jolt. We need to spark things back up. You know what I mean? And it's almost seems like, let's move to the next shiny thing. I know this isn't a shiny card, but just that mindset where it's like, let's move to the next thing we can go from. And like, as far as Star Wars, again, I don't know enough about the card sets. I love the original movies. So I do believe there's a market there. I believe there's a collective market. Now, do I think Star Wars cards are worth 50 to 100 grand? No. I don't believe that. Actually, I had a friend of mine. I was at Card Collector 2's trade night a couple weeks ago, and it was Neo. I love the dude, great guy. Every time I'm around him, such a nice guy. I really enjoy him. And he showed me a really cool auto he had, and like I appreciated it. It was a sick card. It looks cool, and like to me, I wouldn't accuse someone like him of pumping and dumping. I personally wouldn't. I don't think he's walking around. I hate to just name drop and use him. I love you, Neo. You're a good guy. But like, I don't see him walking around like making the card sale saying like this is going to be worth so and so in X amount of time. I think he generally is a collector. And to me, like his behavior pattern proves it. So like, I don't think everybody's pumping everything. I want to premise that. And I don't want to shit on Star Wars. Oh, excuse my French. I don't want to poo-poo on Star Wars cards because, like, hey, to the eyes of the beholder, I respect the market of art in a way. Like, I get that we're basically an art, like, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's something that's personable to you. Brother, go for it. Buy it. Collect it. That's the point of this. But I think other people who've dabbled in the Star Wars and some of the way their content comes off, it's hard not to think like, man, this is manipulative. Like you're it almost like you're putting numbers out there to like justify things and to try to build things. I'm for the free marketplace of ideas. How about we let the next mantle become the next mantle on its own? Why does a grading company deciding to grade a card now automatically make this new Jordan the mantle? It may be, and I could be totally wrong. It just, to me, it almost seems manipulative because one grade or a grading company makes a decision. This is now going to prompt this card up above the Fleer, which has reigned supreme for all this time. And now it's going to be the next mantle. I think people are more addictive with the chase rather than let's just let things happen. Let the next mantle might come about, it might not. And if it doesn't come about, then the marketplace is telling you nothing was as valuable as that. And just let the market play out.
Yeah, so the reason why the mantle is because of the scarcity, and they dumped a bunch of mantles, I think, in the Hudson River in the 60s, I believe. And then they're
Whoa.
looking at
Why was this? I've never heard this before.
I think it was the owners of, I think it was Topps. They just dumped it. They had so much inventory, no one wanted it at the time. So that's how it became scarce. It's a weird story. And then if you look at the star card has scarcity. So that's why I guess people are saying, oh, PSA is grading it now. Now it's the mantle, right? So that's why you have rich guys chasing it. So I don't know.
Again, they're chasing it because somebody else is speculating. And that's where I guess that's where I start to distance because it's like I don't want to join the crowd. I'm not good in lines. I'm not good in lines. I'd rather go walk around, do my own thing, and buy the cards I like. I don't want somebody else speculative economics playing a factor in how I navigate in the hobby. And it's fine that these things happen. I just think it's also okay for me and you to have a sit down and talk about it and not be bad guys and wishing ill will on people. And
exactly.
Yeah, and I do want to say, man, everything I've said, it's all based off the hobby and the market and stuff. Personally, I wish everybody well. I hope everybody's at National kicking butt. I hope they're getting fortune, having a good time. They're networking with friends. I want good things for the hobby, but it's just crazy how I have to premise things just because I question certain things.
Right. And let's just look at a few comments, and we'll probably wrap it up.
We need to get Drake watching AIH.
Yeah, we need to get Drake watching AIH videos so he doesn't spend his fortune.
It's funny you brought that up because I was thinking about that earlier. I wanted to ask you about that. Like, if Drake was hunting for that triple logo man that bad, why didn't he bid on it? That's
Who won the card?
it was Backyard Breaks who hit it. I don't know
No,
who
no, no,
won
but
it.
like who won the card? Who bought it for what was it, $2 million or
I'm not
something?
sure. I know, wasn't it Golden? It was on Golden, I believe. So what my thing is like they were saying numbers like 5 to 6
Ridiculous,
million.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. And like even
And I was
when I
like,
first
that was
heard
like
that, I thought,
ridiculous. I
but
was called out for like saying, "Oh, this is absurd to be
and the
doing
thing
this."
was, this was all happening while LeBron's market is
Tanking.
tanking. And that's where I was like,
Yeah,
hold up, man. Like, and this is where listen, Golden has every right to market their
exactly. They
auction.
do. They have the right.
They have every right to. I want to premise that. But like somebody who's a critical thinker and a questioning mind, when I heard him say 6 mil, I believe, 7 mil possibly, I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute. A triple logo, man, like I don't know. There's not enough history. There's not enough data points. Like I know logo mans sell for a lot. Triple logo mans, I'm not even knowledgeable enough on the market how many cards there are of like that. But to just without any data supporting it, and the only data you have on the card is it's LeBron James and his market is tanking, and you're throwing out numbers like 6 mil.
I
That's
mean,
crazy talk to me. That's crazy.
yeah. I mean, if Golden had the mantle card and he was hyping it, I'd probably shut up because I'm like, okay, the hobby considers this to be the holy grail, right? And
Right.
it's the SGC 95. Okay. Okay, you can market it like crazy. If you want to go on
That right. That's why I brought up
Boardwalk
the
or whatever.
history point.
Yeah, I mean, they're hyping the mantle card, and I haven't criticized the hyping because even though it's overpriced, I'm going to do a video about this. I don't have a problem with it as much because this is a lot of
This
people
is
consider the holy
this is
grail.
the Mona Lisa, my brother.
Yeah.
You're not like if you're going to an art sale and the Mona Lisa pops up, you're not gonna question it. And this is the Mona Lisa for us. So I agree. I think that's different. The logo man, that's why I brought up my history point. Like there's not enough triple logo mans, there's not enough logo mans in that market. There's not enough there's not enough data to get me to believe that speculative price. And to me, again, you market how you want, dude. That's your right. But to me, if I was putting my brand on something and I was participating in that marketplace, like I wouldn't even throw out a speculative. I would just, hey, we have this card that's never been sold, 101. It's all new. Let the hobby decide what it's worth. And that's what made me question. Like he had Drake sit down and do that break with him, which was cool. And you could, sure, it was good for the hobby. I don't know how, but I mean, yeah, it brings attention. People will argue, oh, it was hype. Cool, okay. I'll give you that. It was hype for the hobby. And he supposedly wanted that 101 triple logo, man. Drake wouldn't bid on it. What would he go for? 2 mil, 2 point?
Yes, something like that.
If Drake was willing to sit down and become this hobbyist and do all this stuff, and he's now in the hobby and we're going to market around Drake, why wouldn't he bid on the logo, man? Drake got that bank. He could have bid on that. So it's almost like did someone pay Drake to bump the market, to manipulate the market? And I think that when you ask those questions, like, we used to call them envelopes. You sliding somebody an envelope under the table? Like, is there money exchange? Is there something going on that's not transparent? It's almost like setting a stage. That's why I said to you earlier, like a lot of this stuff, it seems so scripted at this point. And I guess that's a turn off to me.
Yeah, it's just like a real world. It's everything's scripted, and you could tell that it's
Amen,
just a
bro.
bad script.
A lot of us have been calling the script for the last 3-4 years. And dude, I can't help people that aren't willing to question things. If you're willing to be that comfortable, God bless you. I don't think that way.
Yeah. Before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to say that you really want to tell people about? Just that you're ticked off about the hobby, or what you really like, or
Oh man, I hope nobody leaves this chat thinking that man I'm a doom and gloomer and I'm negative and I don't want to be looked upon as like a bad mouth for the hobby. I love the hobby. In fact, I'm going to leave it out on a positive because I do enjoy the hobby. I love searching through certain auction sites. I like talking to people about current situations within sports and in cards. I enjoy networking with people. This hobby is a beautiful thing. And the hobby is it's a community. So like I try not to lose sight of that. And I think profits can cut into that sometimes for people. It has for me. I'm not perfect. You know, I've looked for profits on cards. I mean, no one's perfect, but I think the hobby is a great place. It's a great place to network. If you're doing things right, and you know when you are, because when you leave a deal or you leave an interaction and your gut tells you, if I was on his end, I wouldn't feel good. Like that's what people got to really value, the person and value the community. Like I'll talk to anybody, dude. I'll talk and get along with it. I've set up at shows. I go to shows. You know, I'm always on Instagram looking for the next card. Maybe I can trade. I'll buy something. But the community is great, man. I've been able to branch out to wonderful people, like-minded people, New York, Philly, a lot of people I never would have ever dreamed to speak of. And now you get relationships and friendships and bonds, and it's a wonderful thing. So I hope nobody leaves this conversation where I'm like negative on the hobby. And, you know, I question everything to the point where I take the fun out of it. I enjoy the hobby. I love it. I was just at that Midwest Monster in Indy. I think I was telling you about it, but
Yeah, you told me you
you
got
know,
some
ran
cards.
into great guys. I went shout out to my man Jordan, Brett, Dan, Dave. Like we all went out as a crew, bro. And like that was the best part. Was after Friday, we all sat down at a dinner table and we were together. And yeah, it was cards that brought us together. So the hobby's a wonderful thing, dude. It's a great community. I appreciate it. You know, if anybody ever wants to talk cards, man, shoot me a DM. I'm pretty open. I'll get along with anybody. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
hobby's a great place. People should get into it, but question things and be accountable. And it is a marketplace, so there's financial liability. So you should always question things, second guess, and be thorough with whatever you're doing. I mean, it's just smart.
Yeah. One last question of hobby champs. Splenda, do you do content or do you plan on doing content?
You know, so I don't want to drag on. I've thought about doing content with a group of buddies, the same guys I just shouted out. I want to shout out another buddy of mine, my man Aggie. He's always helping me out with stuff. We go to trade nights and stuff. Great guy. But I'd love to start a podcast with those four guys I mentioned. I think the five of us would have a very successful podcast. I think we bring a very good a very balanced, I don't want to say very good, a very balanced approach to the hobby. We have guys that are full-time dealers, a group of us of friends. Some of us are full-time dealers. Some of us PC like me. Some of us move up and trade. And the goal was to go into higher cards and higher cards and higher value cards. And but we all network well together. I would love the five of us to be able to do something together. I wouldn't want to do something on my own. That's not me. I don't care. Follow me or don't. That's my approach. But like the group of us, I think that would be fun. I'd be willing to do it. I got a premise. It'd be difficult for me, and I'd need supervision with them. I'm thrown off Twitter. I'm cancel cultured off Twitter and stuff. So like,
You're thrown off Twitter? Oh, wow.
yeah, dude, for a crazy reason why. Like,
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm not on Twitter anymore. So like, I'm sure if my voice gets out there, there'd be topics that come up and people would be like, oh man, this dude's outspoken and he don't,
He's more outspoken than me.
yeah, he don't cut. Yeah. He says it how it is. And, but yeah, possibly if it was a group endeavor with guys I enjoy, you know what I mean? I would come back on here, dude. I'd
Yeah,
come on
I
back
would
here with you in
definitely
a
have
second,
you
bro.
back on. I
But
think you made some
I'm
good
not one to like, oh, can I be on your podcast? Can I, and I know other
Yeah.
content guys. I'd never ask. I'm very appreciative that you invited me. We've been talking for a while, and I think idealistically we get each other a little bit, more than a little bit. I think we get each other a lot. But I'm not experienced enough to know. I'll tell you this, I would never walk around a card show with a vlog. I'd never do that. It would have to be like a podcast where like me and the bros just sit down and we shoot the breeze and talk smack and poke the bear.
All right, Steve, I really enjoyed this. This is much different than other podcasts that I've done or live streams.
Likewise, my brother. I appreciate you, Raul. I thank you for having me on, and blessings, safety, everybody be healthy. I hope everybody's well out there. I hope they're killing it at National. Good fortune and safe travels to everybody, man. I hope the National's going well.
Awesome. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, brother.